Resin8 here. This is a very quick tutorial on how to pick, dry and preserve very special flowers ready for your resin creations. Let's get started. So we've got some beautiful large Michaelmas daisies here, and the key is to snip them as long as you want them, really. So we're going to take a few daisy heads and a few daisies with their stems still intact. We're going to show you how best to dry them with a couple of different approaches. We're going to use a traditional flower press, an old book and some Resin8 silica. So you'll have some different techniques to really get the most from flowers. We're going to start off with a traditional flower press. So these are sandwiched with cardboard, tissue and blotting paper, and you can pop your flowers individually to get a nice clean pressed finish. We've got some here that we've already had a go at. So when using a traditional flower press, you're going to want to pop your flowers in for 7 to 14 days as a guideline. The more moisture that the flower has, the longer you need to press it for. So these daisies, the centre of the daisies are quite moisture rich, so we've left these in for about 10 days. They need to feel nice and like tissue paper to touch. If there's any moisture left in them, they're not going to preserve successfully in the resin. So that's how you press your flowers. We sandwich them between tissue paper accordingly. If you don't have a traditional flower press, or you found yourself a really nice flower and you want to pick it straight away but you have no press, you can use a traditional old book that's not a special book, something that it's okay if it gets stained from your flowers when they're drying. And all you do is you open your book, you pop some tissue paper inside your book and you pop your daisies. So we've just picked these ones. You pop your daisies in. You can see how much of the bloom there that's full of moisture, so it really needs to be squashed quite with something quite heavy. So a book is a great way of preserving your flowers, but with some flowers that are high in pigment or colour, really bright bold colours, you'll find that a traditional flower press you can squeeze nice and tight with the bolts to get a really good colour retention. You don't get as much of a colour retention with a book, although it is just as successful. So it really depends. If it's a special flower that you're preserving, then you're going to really want to get yourself a flower press. But if it's just a quick flower press for a craft that's not as important, then a book will do. You can put some greaseproof paper or some baking paper sheets between that tissue as well, just to absorb some moisture, and that stops any flowers turning black. Sometimes that can happen, but for these daisies, tissue is going to suffice. Seal your book up, and then you need to put lots of heavy weight on top for about 10 days and you'll get a great press from those flowers. And we have done that with these here. And they've come out really well, and they last quite a long time. Pop them in a little pot, pop the lid on and store them in a dark, dry place, and you've got those to use for a long time. They look fab. And then if you don't want to have a flat flower and you want to have something more full, you want to preserve the whole bloom, I've got some really pretty ones here, you're going to need to get some Resin8 silica sand. So it looks like sugar, but it's not. It's a great grain that dehydrates and takes all the moisture out of your flower. So what you do is, for the first time you use it, you pour a bed of Resin8 into your caddy or your Tupperware pot or anything that you're using. A nice bed of silica Resin8 sand. You take your bloom. Now you don't need to take the stalk off. You could leave the stalk on now because we're drying the whole bloom. You might find it easier to do it with tweezers. And you just pop them in to your bed of Resin8. fully merge and fully cover them. And it's about 10 days again, but all flowers will really vary in how long. It's never usually more than 14 days. You might want to check on some flowers such as forget-me-nots, you might want to check these after 7 days. They're not as moisture rich as a full bloom. So we've covered that. Pop a little note on, tell yourself when you need to come back and check it. And you can reuse the dry it. Once you've finished with it, you can pop it in the oven. It can go on 110 to 120 degrees for 2 hours and it rejuvenates all of the properties of the dry it. So it's reusable, which is fantastic. And we've got some here. This is some pretty white flowers that we're going to use in a cast that with some fillet resin. These have been preserving for about 10 days, so it's time to wake them up from their dry it nap. So you could use a sieve or you could just very carefully remove the granules. We use tweezers just to help prise them out. And you can check them. Do check that they feel like tissue. If they haven't dried properly or they need a little bit longer, just pop them back into the silica and give them another day or two. But these are absolutely perfect, great for our resin projects. So there you have it, 3 easy techniques to get the most out of your flowers. Top tips are to make sure that you leave them in the silica long enough, as well as the traditional flower press. Check that they feel like paper. Any moisture at all, when you pop them into your resin, it will tint your resin yellow or a horrible brown colour. So it is really important that they are 100% dry. Great, thanks for watching.